Have you heard a lot of chit chat about perfect Riyaz? Like, Riyaz is very important. You have to get up at 4 a.m. Do Kharaj Riyaz. You should practice for 6 hours. I used to practice for 10 to 12 hours in a day. This and that. But how much true is it? Is it really essential and practically possible to do all this in today's time? Or there is an effective technique to do the Riyaz in short time? So let us dive deep. Whenever we start learning music, everyone tells you, do your Riyaz. Some even say, wake up at 4 am, practice for 10 hours, and only then you will become a great musician. But let's be honest, when we actually sit down to practice, we often wonder, what exactly should I do? So in this video, I will answer 4 big questions every music learner has. First, what kind of Riyaz should we do? Second, how much time should we practice? Third, how to keep our practice interesting and less boring. Fourth, how to split a Riyaz over a week or a month's time. This video is quite long video, but stick with me till end. I will be giving a practical framework that will make your Riyaz not just effective but also enjoyable. I have tried to consolidate all possible Riyaz techniques in detail and with a demo in this video. You can watch complete video once and then go through it section by section to digest it if the full video becomes too much overwhelming for you. So try and explore with your pace and capacity. First, let us tackle the biggest question. What Riyaz should you do? Most people think that Riyaz is just singing the scales or paltas endlessly. But that's only one part. According to me, there are 6 main types of Riyaz techniques and plus one bonus. Let's quickly see them. First one, listening Riyaz or sunne ka Riyaz. Second is Riyaz of your voice or throat, gale ka Riyaz. Third one is Riyaz of Taal and Lay. Fourth is Riyaz of aesthetic elements, ornamentation or Raag Chalan. Fifth one is Riyaz of a bandish or composition. Sixth is practicing concentration and focus. And the last one is application. Like we learn all these things, but we need to practice to apply them in our performance. So let us explore each of these techniques one by one. Listening Riyaz. Have you heard about this? Well, this is most underrated but most important practice. More than your throat, your ears need training first. So what does this include? Well, according to me, it has different parts. 1. Listening to multiple compositions in the same rag. Second, tuning and listening to the tanpura. Third is recognizing the notes. Fourth one, training your ear for tal and lay. Fifth one, listening to different classical music concerts. And last one, listening to yourself for improvement. Key here is that while doing all this, we have to hear it actively. That is very essential. So now let us see all these 6 types one by one. So the first one, what I said, was listening to different compositions in the same rag. When we listen to various compositions in the same rag, we are actually training our brain and ears to get familiarized with that rag. Have you ever wondered how some people can instantly tell you which rag is being sung? Or They can catch every note as well, every beat, effortlessly. Well, that is not magic. It is about training given to ears and brain. When you listen to different compositions in the same rag, you're actually training your brain and ears to recognize unique patterns. Over the time, you will start catching the signature phrases and eventually you will just know when a particular rag is being played or sung. Remember, we have to focus on music part of it, not the lyrical part, to understand the rag. And actually, it's not that difficult. Think of it like this. You can often tell what's cooking in the kitchen just by the smell, right? Or you can recognize a song just from the introductory music piece, isn't it? Same idea, exactly same idea works here. It's about pattern recognition. In older times, they said truly rich musician was the one who knew at least 20 to 30 different compositions or bandish in a rag. In some families, you will not believe, but they used to give bandish in dowry. Crazy, right? But that's how valuable these compositions were. So, listen to as many compositions as possible in same rag actively. Next one is listening and tuning the tanpura. Tanpura is used as a reference or a bass note for singing in any classical performance. We need to keep listening to the tanpura throughout the performance, and therefore it is very essential to train our ears to listen to the tanpura. The indicator of the best tuned tanpura is one when we can hear a gandhar or ga from the lowest string tuned in sa. But most of the time our ears are not trained, initially at least. So we need to train the ears to hear that sound. So learning the tanpura tuning, playing and listening to it is very important. Great maestros like Pandit Kumar Gandharva simply used to listen to the tanpura for hours and hours. Can you recognize which note is being sung or played just by hearing it? Well, that is the next level. Recognizing the notes. Once we get familiarized with the music and get idea about the notes used in any particular rag, then there is a training to recognize those notes. Sometimes this happens automatically or at the subconscious level. But is there a method to practice it consciously? Yes. Initially, we can ask someone to play random notes on harmonium and then try to recognize whether it's ma, whether it's pa, whether it's komal re, and so on. Then we can practice singing some phrases in sargam, followed by singing the same phrases in akar and then in words. Gradually, we would be able to recognize the notes even in the faster tans while listening to the other singers. This happens when the brain is trained through enough practice or all these previous exercises. If you want to see this at the highest level, do watch some of the Pandit Ajay Chakravarti's videos. The way he identifies the notes is truly inspiring. I have added the link in the description box. Then comes training your ear for Taal and Lay. Taal, or percussion instrument used in classical singing, include pakhavach, tabla, or mridangam. These instruments have their own language with the syllables which are known as bols in any particular tal. Nowadays, there are many digital options available like apps or digital tabla. We can use those to train our ears to understand the tal, lay, and bol. Just turn on any tal, select a scale and in any particular pitch and just listen to it. We can also say the bols of the tal along with it so that we can easily recognize all those bowls. You know, classical music concerts, they provide a great opportunity to learn Indian classical music. Unlike listening to the audio or video recordings, if we experience the live concert, that is a very different experience. What all should we listen to in a specific concert? Well, we need to understand how the artist selects a particular rag for the concert, how they design their performance, how and where audience respond or give reaction to the singer. We can also learn about the sound setting, use of microphone, use of monitor, presence of the artist on the stage, everything. Actually, concert also teaches what not to do. Whenever audience give a negative feedback, they may say, "Oh, it doesn't sound that good," or whatever. That means there is a scope for improvement. We can learn all this by sitting amongst the audiences in the classical concerts. Next one is very important. It is listening to yourself. If we want to improve our performance, we must listen to ourselves. Do record your own music and listen to it. I used to do that. Take a feedback, make the corrections. This is a process of continuous learning and improvement. So, this was all about 6 types of listening riyas. Now, let us see other types. Next riyas is Galika riyas or training your voice. There are different ways in which we can train our voice so that we can mold it in different ways and sing different aspects of music. So, according to me, there are different ways. So, what are they? 1. Pitch or sur perfection. That is, singing long notes along with tanpura or other apps. Second one is swar patterns. We can call them palte, merukhand or swaralanka. Then next one is clear pronunciation, focusing on vowels and words. Fourth one is speed control, practicing slow and fast speed gradually and gracefully. And of course, last one is pranayam and airflow to control the voice. This practice builds stability, flexibility, and it brings power in your singing. Let us see all these 5 types one by one with the demo. So, in the previous section about listening riyas, we focused on identification of the notes. But that is not, that is important, but that is not the only important thing. What is more important for vocal music is being able to produce those notes. So, listening is just the beginning of it. To truly internalize those notes, we need to sing them accurately and with control. Now, here is a challenge. When we practice on our own, especially in the beginning, it's very hard to tell whether we are singing a right note or not. How do we know that? No. How will we get the feedback? We might feel unsure about it. Am I singing it correctly? Is it correct pitch? Does it sound right? All these questions. So that's where harmonium can be really helpful. You can play a note on harmonium and sing along with it. It gives us a reference point, something solid to match our voice to. These days, there are different apps available as well, like Swarmeter or Shruti. Those tools, they visually show us whether we are hitting the perfect pitch or not. Let me show you one app. So this is a Swarmeter app. Now you can see the circle, and in that circle there are different pitch. Okay, and you can set the pin to the right pitch. So suppose I am singing now in D sharp. I want to sing, and I want to check whether I'm singing correctly or I'm not singing correctly. So now I will play Tanpura as a background, which is set to D sharp, which will act as my reference. Now here, if I sing Sa, 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 Re, Ga, Ma. So we can observe where that pin is pointing. So it will tell us whether we are singing correctly or we are not singing correctly. And that is how on our own we can keep improving. As you can see, when I was singing the note, that pin was pointing at a specific note. So that will indicate whether we are singing in correct pitch or not. So this is how we can practice on our own. Now one important point about these apps. Okay, these apps, they measure only the pitch, but they won't help us with the tone, texture or timbre of our voice. For that, we need a good teacher. Like I can show you, for example, again. So this here. Sa, S, S, can you see? Even if I make some weird voice or weird noise, whatever you can call it, it was still pointing at the sun. So the apps, they recognize the pitch, but they will not help you to improve the tone and texture or timbre of your voice. That's where actually Tanpura is very helpful. Or we can get a feedback from a good teacher, or we can keep listening to good singers, good teacher to improve the tone and texture of our voice. Now the teacher can correct our mistakes, they can guide us, and they can help develop our voice. So that is very important. In the Riyaz, now, as I was saying, so for this Riyaz, this was about pitch perfection. But then there is another one to sing the long notes, because we have to sing the steady notes. That is very important in Indian classical music. Like we cannot sing like fumbling notes. Okay, for example, Sa, versus Sa, Sa, Sa. That trembling or fumbling, it should not happen. So how to do this practice? Initially, we cannot sing the notes for longer and longer time. So start with 4 counts. Say Sa, Re. Likewise. Then we can increase those counts and see how long we can stay steady on a particular note. For example, first 4 counts, now 8 counts. So Sa, okay, then 12 counts. Sa, likewise we can increase gradually. So this practice, it builds stability in our voice. It trains our breath. It gives us a pitch control and focus. It's deeply grounding practice, especially beneficial in the early morning to open up our voice. Same thing, if we do in lower notes, it might become a courage career. The next practice in voice riyas is singing the palte, meherkhand or sargam or swaralankas. So as we deepen our riyas, it's just not about singing individual notes, but it's about exploring different patterns of the notes. These patterns are called swara alankars or sometimes referred to as palte. They are essentially musical exercises that train our brain and voice so that the voice can move smoothly and accurately as we think. So it happens through different note combinations. One very powerful technique in this space is known as Merukhand, or more technically Swaraprastha. This is mentioned in the old ancient book on music Sangeet Ratnakar as well. So this is a way of practicing different permutations and combinations of notes or swaras. Now, how we create these different permutations and combinations? So we just create like a musical note lattice or a musical web, and that strengthens our grip, or we get a grip over those notes, or we get a command over all those notes, and then the voice can follow automatically when we want to sing all those notes in a perfect flow. So let's take a basic swara alanka. Okay. Sa re ga ma pa ma pa da ni da ni sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. So first we practice it slowly, listening carefully to each of those notes, whether we are singing it correctly or not, whether the transition is happening correctly or not. Then once we get comfortable, we can increase the speed slightly, but keep the clarity. And then we can increase the speed further. We can also sing it in akar, like ah ah. Let me show you. Likewise. So it helps to build a tone and get a breath control and good voice control. Now this was just one swara alankar, but after a time it becomes boring, right? So how to make these patterns more interesting and more challenging as well? So that time we can use repeating swaras. For example, sa sa re ga ma pa. Instead of sa re ga ma pa, we will do sa sa re ga ma pa, or sa re ga ma pa. Like this, we can develop more and more patterns. And in Merukhand, actually, there are different permutations and combinations, like sa re ga re sa ga re ga sa re ga sa ga re sa, with 3 notes, 6 different combinations. And with all these, we can build different swara alankars. So that is how we can bring variety in our practice. We will see it later in the later part of this video as well. How can we bring the variety in the practice and make it less boring? So now these what we saw, the alankars, and adding different layer of complexity, it really sharpens our vocal reflexes. We can create multiple such patterns on our own. Now, one thing we have to remember, when we apply these alankars to a particular rag or we sing it in a specific rag, we must follow the rules of the rag. For example, in Rag Yaman, we cannot use Saregam, Regama, Gamapa, because in Aroha there is no Sa. Instead, we have to use Nirega, and Madhyam is Tivra in Rag Yaman. So how would it sound? In Yaman, for example, the same Sarega Regama in Yaman, it will be like Ni Rega Regama Gama Dha. Likewise. So the same palta, when we have to apply in a specific rag, we have to modify it according to the rag rules. So this way, our practice also remains within the rag grammar or the rag rules, while we can still explore and show the musical creativity. So in the voice riyaz or voice practice, next important part is about pronunciation or uchcha. One of the most common complaints we hear from the audiences when they listen to the classical performances, especially all the alaps and even the bandish part of it. So they can't hear the words clearly and properly. This is a common complaint, and that is true. In many performances, the uchchar or the pronunciation it tends to be very blurred. But a pronunciation is not just about the diction, but also about the musicality. So we do the riyaz of the swaras, we also have to do the riyaz of the pronunciation or the ucha. In any language, there are consonants and vowels. So A, E, I, O, U in English. These are vowels and rest all are consonants. So in classical music especially, when we try to match the lyrics with the musical phrases, it is most of the time the vowels that flow with the melody. Consonants, on the other hand, they need to be pronounced quickly and precisely. Otherwise, they interrupt the music flow. Let's take one example. Say, Bansiya Bajai is one lyrical phrase. Now listen carefully. The parts that stretch musically are the vowels, like ya, si, ja, yi. So these contain the vowels like a and e, which can be molded in different way, but not the consonants. So let us see a demo. Now the Bansiya Bajai in Raag Yaman. So Bansiya Bajai. So what I was stretching or molding were the vowels. Instead of that, if I stretch the consonant like b or d, then it will sound very unnatural. Like I will show you. Bansiya bajai 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 bansiya. So can you hear the difference? If we stretch the consonants, it doesn't sound that good. That is why vowel riyaz is very essential. Now, how to practice it? How to do the riyaz of the vowels? So, take one phrase. Say, Saregama Padanisa Sanidapa Magaresa in Aroha and Avroha. Okay. I will sing it slowly in Sargam first and then the same in A, A, U, O, likewise. So, I will show you. Sare gama padhani sa sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa in sargam, then in akam. Then eka. Ika. Then O. Then U. And finally, with humming sound. So, this simple exercise it trains our brain to focus on the vowels when we see or when we sing the actual lyrics. It conditions our tongue, jaw, facial muscles as well. So they can move quickly, they can mold quickly according to the words and when we try to match the musical phrases with the words by focusing on the vowels without disturbing the musicality of the words as well as meaning of the words. So over the time, your uchchar, the pronunciation will become natural and clearer. Now the audience, they won't just enjoy the melody, but they will also understand the words which you are singing with clarity. So remember, we have to deliver both sur as well as shabd, that is the words, clearly to the audience. And that is why This riyaz of pronunciation or uchcha is also very important. Then comes the riyaz of managing the speed of the singing. It is generally said that singing fast is very difficult, and yes, it is challenging. But slow singing, especially singing it gracefully with feeling without sounding it dull, is even more difficult. Let me give you one example. If you are riding a bike, which is harder to balance at 40 km per hour or at 5 km per hour? It's the slower speed, right? Because you need more control, more balance, and you do it with more consciousness and caution. So, singing is also like that. We must train ourselves to handle both the speeds with grace without losing the musicality as well as control. Key is to keep our mind calm and grounded. Don't let yourself get swept away with the speed, either side, slow or fast speed. Now, when we actually practice this, Tal becomes our best friend in this practice. It keeps us on track for the speed. So, how to do this? We can start singing one note per beat of a Tal. Then we can move gradually, like two notes per beat, eventually four notes per beat. This is called in Hindi Dugun, Chaugun, and so on. Similar exercises are also practiced in the Carnatic style system as well. We will see more about this in Tal and Laya section. Now, what about the Vilambit Laya? The slow tempo used in the Khyal singing. Because the beats are very slow and there is quite a big gap between two beats. Now, how to manage that? Here is a technique. Mentally divide each beat into four parts. Even though the beat is slow, I will show you one demo. So here is a Vilambit Ek Tal. I am playing it on the tabla machine, digital tabla machine. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ti, ra, ki, ta. So that ti, ra, ki, ta in the ek tal, it actually helps us to divide those four parts mentally. So that is the technique. Another great exercise about the tal exercise is reversing the process. Like first we saw that we will be singing say one note per bit, two notes per bit. Likewise, instead of that, what we can do, we'll sing one note per two beats. Or we can even skip a note, a specific note in a tal cycle. So more details we will discuss in the lay and tal section. Now there are different kinds of variations to sharpen awareness and control when we sing, especially when we switch between different layers, and that is where this particular exercise or practice is very helpful. So before we actually begin any vocal riyaz, it is important to prepare not just the voice but also breath and mind. That is where pranayam comes into picture. I have already spoken in detail about pranayam in a different video. Pranayam actually helps for steadiness of the mind. It helps improving the flow of the breath. It helps to increase the chest capacity and also helps to expand our vocal range. So, I won't repeat all of that again, which I have talked about in a different video. You can go to that video and learn more about it. But I do want to emphasize one thing. Even 10 minutes of pranayam a day before your voice riyaz can make a big difference. It settles our mind, it opens the body, it helps to smoothen the airflow, it prepares our system to stay focused, and so that our practice will also be very effective. One important caution note: pranayam should be always done empty stomach. So ideally after 2 hours of eating, or you should not have eaten anything for 2 hours when you are actually start your pranayam practice. So time your practice accordingly. These vocal exercises are like gym workouts for your voice. They strengthen pitch, they strengthen the vocal muscles, they improve the airflow, they help to discover different patterns which we will use in the improvisation, vistar, and the performance. Even the most melodious voice can fall flat without the rhythm. Do you agree? Well, except for the free alaps in classical music, which are actually very beautifully sung, but without tal, they generally without tal, we sing the those alaps, but they have internal lay in them. In Hindustani vocal music, where we often sing the Vilambit Laya, maintaining the steady sense of tal on our hands or in the mind is very challenging. Of course, in Carnatic music, you will notice that the tal is often kept with the hands, like this, in very systematic way throughout the performance. All the artists do that. But in Hindustani music, especially slower tempos, that method may not work every time. In fact, keeping the tal on our hands during the Vilambit Bandish, that too while handling different complex ornamentations and improvisations, can be extremely difficult. In truth lay as well, sometimes it can just throw us off if we are not internalized lay or the rhythm properly. So now how to work on this? How do we become more naturally, or how we'll sing it naturally in the laya? So even if no one is clapping or no one is giving tal, the lay should be alive within us. And how to do that? Well, I have learned and practiced 4 techniques that have helped me, and I believe they will help you too to manage the lay and tal. First is playing the tanpura with steady rhythm. Second, singing the swaras on specific beats of a tal. Third one is practicing bandish word by word with tal cycle. And last one is reciting and singing the tal bowls. The goal is to internalize the rhythm so that it becomes just like a second nature. Let me walk you through all these 4 types one by one with the demo. You know, we often think of the tanpura just as a background instrument, something that plays while we sing or do the riyaz. But actually, playing the tanpura itself can be one of the most powerful forms of riyaz. It helps us deep listening. It helps us to focus. It also helps us to listen to the inner stillness or get that inner stillness, and even for the lay control. Many times, especially when we sing faster compositions, we actually go into the Drutalaya, like while playing the Tanpura. So there is a tendency to speed up that Tanpura playing without even realizing it. And that's very natural, but it is something that we have to be aware of, because ideally when we are playing the Tanpura or the 4 strings of those Tanpura, our hand should maintain steady, consistent rhythm, regardless how fast or slow we are singing. Let me show you what I mean. I will show you with the Tanpura. So here is an example how Tanpura playing often speeds up unconsciously when the singer is singing fast. So generally a Tanpura is played like sa sa sa. fa, sa, sa, fa, sa, sa. So this is a general pace how we play the tanpura. Now this is how it should sound. Staying calm and steady strokes. Even if we are singing in the fast life, generally what happens otherwise when we actually switch to the fast life, so we start playing tanpura like ting 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 ting. Because we get excited and we start playing it fast. However, even if we are singing fast, the tanpura should be played in a consistent manner. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fast. Okay, so we are actually training our ears, our mind, and our hands to stay anchored even when the musical tempo changes. And that is how we can internalize the laya. One of the most effective ways to develop a strong sense of lay and tal is by practicing the sargam phrases or swaralankars, but doing them with the structured rhythmic cycle or tal. Let's take an example. Say teen tal or even adi tal in Carnatic music both have 16 beat, or it is a 16 beat cycle. Now, there are different ways in which we can do this practice. We can keep tal on our hands like dha din din 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 likewise. Or we can use a tabla app or even the tabla machine to practice this. Now these techniques are quite similar to one which we saw in the vocal riyaz section. There also we saw about one particular technique. So now let me show you few methods that can work really well. Let's start with the basic swaralanka like sare gama. So first, let us sing one note per beat of the tal cycle. So dha din din dha. So we'll sing sare gama. Okay. Likewise. Now, first I will show you the demo. So here is the teen tal cycle. Dha din din 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 dha. Now how to practice the swaralanka? Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Like one note on one beat. We can actually reduce the tempo as well. Okay, now if this is sounding very fast initially, we can reduce the tempo. Sa re ga ma. Likewise, we can also reduce it the tempo. Da din din da. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa. Sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Okay. Now this was like one note for one beat of the tal. Now we can try singing the two notes per beat of the tal. So sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa. Instead of that is how we were singing. re ga ma pa dha ni sa, sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa, sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa, sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa, sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. Okay, so the two notes per one beat of the tal cycle. Similarly, we can move to 3 swars per beat and then 4 swars per beat. And we can also increase or decrease the tempo of the tal cycle. This practice builds a rhythmic control. It is also excellent practice to prepare our voice for dance and also speed based improvisations, which we actually checked in the vocal riyaz, right? Do you remember? Here we are training both the voice agility as well as the lay awareness in the same practice technique or at the same time. Another useful technique is to intentionally skip certain bits in a tal cycle. Let us say in 16 beat teen tal. Okay, so what we can do, we can skip the fourth beat. So we were singing sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa. So fourth beat is like sa re ga ma. So we'll skip the ma and pa dha ni sa. So in that we'll skip the sa. So how to practice it along with the tal cycle? So let me show you. Din din ta din din ta ta din din. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa, sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa, sa re ga pa dha ni, sa ni dha ma ga re. Did you notice in the second when I was singing second time, I skipped the fourth note. So that will bring the awareness of the mind. So this forces our mind to to be or in a rhythm or keep us ourselves on the track even when we are not feeling the every beat with the note. So that's a great exercise actually to stay anchored to the tal even in the silence. I mean we are not singing it or filling that gap musically, we are skipping that note. So we can experiment, skip like every third beat or create our own patterns of skipping or any other patterns likewise. So these practices, they are very simple that way, but they are very powerful and they will bring a dramatic change in your voice or your music when we are singing. If you want to go deeper into these kind of rhythmic exercises, I highly recommend watching some of the videos by Anol Chatterjee, who is disciple of Pandit Ajay Chakravarti ji on YouTube. He shares some very systematic and creative approaches, especially for the Hindustani vocalists. And also, if you are interested in say Carnatic system, I would suggest exploring some lessons by say Suguna Purushottaman on YouTube. I found her approach to the rhythm and swara very insightful. So I'm giving the links of all those videos in the description. One more modulation can be changing speeds within the same tal. Like we can start our phrase in say ek gun, one note per beat, then try dogun, two notes per beat, trigun, three notes per beat, or reverse way, like two notes per one beat. Likewise, so we can play with the speed or even the way in which we are actually singing the notes. So practicing the tihai, like what we call it, like the same phrase is sung 3 times and landing on a sum by catching the correct mukda or the first part of the bandish. So it is also another technique to get the mastery over your tal and lay. So another important technique to practice in tal and lay is practicing a bandish with a tal cycle. I remember listening to an interview of Vidushi Padma Talwalkarji where she shared a beautiful practice technique taught to her by her guru, Vidushi Mogubai Kurdikar, during her early training days. This technique is especially useful in Vilambit or Madhyalay Khyal singing. The idea is simple but powerful. So take any bandish, say which you are working on. Now try to sing that bandish in such a way that each word of the bandish or even the letter it falls exactly on one beat of a Tal cycle. This technique has actually come from Drupad. So the Drupad musicians basically they practice it in the bandish or even during singing they do the improvisation in that particular way. Now let's see how the technique works. For example, you're working with a 16-beat cycle, Teen Tal, and we take one bandish, say famous bandish in Yaman, Eri I Pi Abina. Now each word of this bandish should correspond to one particular beat. Let's see a demo, okay? So, Sakhi hai piya bin sakhi. That is the bandish, right? So now if we want to sing it or we want to practice this particular technique in Teen Tal, ta ta din din ta ta din din ta ta. Eri ai piya piya bina sakhi eri ai. I will reduce the tempo a bit. This is quite fast tempo. Then na. Yeri ai piya bina yeri ai piya bina yeri ai piya bina. Okay, so we can repeat the bandish again and again very slowly and make sure that every time each word of the bandish lands on the same beat in a particular cycle. This kind of focused repetition it actually helps us develop precision and it also helps deeper our internal understanding or internalizing the lay and tal. Initially, it might feel slow or even mechanical when we are actually practicing it for first time, but over the period of time, this method actually helps to train our voice as well as the mind to stay in sync with the tal when we are actually singing. The last or the fourth technique in tal, bol, or laya practice is like practicing the bol of the tal in different matras. So, how do we do that? Now, this technique is quite similar to the sargam exercise which we saw earlier, but instead of singing the sargam, that is sare gama, here we would be focusing on the bols of the tal. Now, let's take an example, say teen tal, which has 16 beats in a tal cycle. Now, the idea is to sing different tal bols or tal phrases but starting each phrase from different matras or beats within the tal cycle. So it might sound bit difficult. I will give you one example. So you might start the bowls at the first beat, you can start the second beat and gradually like the third beat and fourth beat and so on. So the cycle should end every time we should come with the 16 beat cycle or we should complete that. So this actually helps our mind and voice to become flexible and aware of how the tal cycle is moving ahead and whether we are actually following it or not. We have to actually be aware of the sum as well. We have to hit it every time, you know. Now I will share this technique which I learned from my teacher, Professor Nilesh Karikar. So here is a quick demo. Let's say in the teen tal, I will show you like how to make a different patterns or as I was saying you can gradually change the different matras 1 2 3 likewise. So how to do that? So the teen tal goes like this: dha din din dha dha din din dha dha din din ta ta din din dha dha din din dha dha din din dha dha din din ta ta din din dha. Now we'll keep the last structure same, or sorry, the initial structure same, and then from the 12th matra, so last four matras we will be singing a different phrase. Okay. So now everything will keep the same, but the last four matras we will change. For example, dha din din dha dha tin tin ta ta din din dha din din dha din din dha. Okay, or dha din din dha din din dha tin tin ta ta din di din dha din din dha din din dha tin tin ta ta din di din dha din din dha. So we changed it from the 12th 12th matra. Now let us change from the 11th matra. So dha din dha tin tin ta. That is, instead of dha tin tin ta, we'll change that phrase from dha tin tin. That is the 11th matra. So dha tin tin ta din dha is the 12-bit cycle, but we will change it from the 11th matra. So dha tin tin dina dha tin tin dina dha. So likewise, we can make different patterns, and we have to like do it within the 16-bit tal cycle, and we have to make sure that we are catching the sum every time. So these exercises actually the like people who actually learn tabla, they actually do. But even as a singers, at least some of these exercises would be helpful for us to internalize the line. So likewise, we can reduce one matra and keep singing the teen tal cycle. You can do same for other matras or for other tals as well. Now there is one more advanced version of mastering the tal and lay, which is singing a bandish which is actually composed in a specific tal, say teen tal or ek tal, but that bandish we have to sing in another tal without disturbing the structure or the aesthetics of the bandish. So that is the advanced technique. Uh, right now, let us focus only on the basic techniques, which are, I think these techniques itself, they are quite overwhelming. So when we actually start practicing, have you ever noticed this? If I sing just plain notes in any rag, say Yaman or Bhu, I will show you the demo. Say Yaman. Ni re ga ma re ga re ma re ga ni re ga re ni re ma re ga re ni re sa. So it's correct. It follows the rag. But to be honest, you'd probably get bored pretty quickly, right? Now listen to the same notes but sung little different. Ni re ga ni re ga ma re ga re ma ma ga ma ga re ma ma re ma ma re ga re ga ni re ma ni re ni re. This second one, it feels more alive, doesn't it? Suddenly there is movement, expression, beauty. This is where music becomes an art. A plain sequence of note. It can sound dull, but add alankars and see, music comes alive. These little alankars or these flourishes, the way we glide, we oscillate, we touch and twist the notes. These are called alankars or ornaments. Technical terms for the same, they are like gamakams or mean, katka, harkat, murki, etc. think of it like this. Swaras are just like dots. Alankars are how we actually connect these dots into a beautiful design. And that is where music comes alive. And it's not just the Alankars. There are two more things which really shape or give the feel to the music. They are voice modulation, how we deliver each note, and the phrase design. The patterns which we choose and how we build those patterns. Now together, all these three, alankars, modulations and phrase design, these are the tools that bring emotion and artistry into the music. So these can be mastered with three different types of riyas. First one, alankars like meend, gamak, kan, harkat, nyas. Second one is the phrase construction according to the rag rules. And the third one is voice modulation using dynamics like loud or soft voice for producing an expression. This helps move from just singing simple notes to creating the music. Let us see how to practice them one by one. Alankars. Alankars or ornaments, they are the one who give life and expression to the music. Now, there are many different types, and while I will use the Hindustani classical terminologies here because that's what I am most familiar with, but the core concepts are similar in Drupad or Carnatic music as well. Not only that, the same apply to light classical music, semi-classical music like forms Thumri, Ghazal, Abhang, classical film songs, and so on. All types of music. Now, to explore this, let us take simple phrase, just four notes, in say Raag Saran. Okay, Pani Sare. Now I will sing the plain phrase in Raag Saran. Pani Sare, Pani Sare. Now, we will apply different alankars to this exact phrase, one by one, and hear how each one transforms and gives the feel of the music. Let's start with mean first. This is like smooth glide between the two notes. We will add mean between pa, ni and sare. So pa, ni, sare, pa and ni mean and sa and re. So initially it was like without mean this phrase will sound like this. Pa, ni, sare, pa, ni, sare. Now with the mean. Pa, ni, sare, pa, ni, sare. Can you feel the difference? It sounds different, right? So it flows almost like gliding on silk. You can try adding mean in multiple ways by making different combinations of these notes. So the next alankar is kan. It is like quick grace note added just before to the main note. Now this time we will make the next one as kan for the previous one. So pani sare, right? So we will make ni as a kan before pa and re as a kan before sa. So pa ni sa re, with the kan application it will become ni pa ni re sa re, ni pa ni re sa re, na. So this subtle touch and the elegance, so it just flourishes the music like a painting. Now let's try another alankar, which is like gamak, which is like strong oscillation, and that adds different kind of dynamics to the music, like vibrating energy to a note. Now what we will do, we will double the first two and the last two swaras. Like in the Pani Sare, we will use the gamak. So Pani Sare instead of Pani Pani and Sare Sare. That is how we will sing. But the Pani Sare phrase. So now how will it sound? So Pani Pani Ni Sare Sare Re. Do you notice the power and the movement in those notes just by adding one simple ornament or the alankar? It gives that phrase a weight and intensity. So that is the power of gamak. Another ornament or the alankar is known as harkat. It is like quick decorative movement, like a fast little loop or a flick in the melody. Let's apply it on the third swar, say sa. In Pani Sare, same phrase on the sa. Now what we will do is we will use a small phrase like re re ni as harkat and we will apply it on the sa. That is the third note. So now let us sing. Pa ni sa re with the harkat of re re ni. Pa ni re ni sa re. Pa ni re ni sa re. It's a subtle but beautiful addition, right? It's like a quick spiral in a brush stroke. Now, finally, we have a nyas, another ornament. Nyas means to rest or stay for a longer time on one particular note, giving it more weightage and also the emotion. So let's try two versions. Okay, first nyas on ni in Pani Sare and next we'll do the nyas on sa. So without nyas, Pani Sare. Now we will give the nyas on ni. Pani Sare. Pani Sare. And now nyas on sa. Pani Sare. Pani Sare. See how it completely changes the feel. Nyas gives the space and gravity to the note. You can practice these alankars with any phrase in any rag. Now try them in akar, try them with lyrics and do different type of improvisations and bring a different essence in your music. Now I am also linking very useful series by Pandit Vijay Bakshiji in the description. In these videos, it goes deeper into how to practice these alankars and shape your music more aesthetically and make it more beautiful. So, in the practice of the aesthetics, the next Riyaz is about construction of the phrases according to the Raag Chalan for the Raag Vistar. Have you ever wondered why, even after practicing a lot of Swaralankars or Palta, it is still hard to use them fluently in our performance? The reason is simple. Those patterns are like words, and just like in any language, words alone do not create any meaning. We need sentences, right? Imagine I say, I play, you go for ball. Random words. Does it make any sense? No, right? But if I say, let's go and play, I will take the bat, you take the ball. Now that's a proper sentence and it makes sense. Swara and swar patterns are like vocabulary. But what brings them life is how we connect them. According to the rag rules, we have to construct different musical sentences or phrases. The different alankars which we looked at, they give the expression to these sentences. But before that, we need to construct a sentence, right? Eventually, just like we build paragraphs in language, we also learn to build larger musical phrases or passages for the full rag improvisation or the performance. But let's focus on the step before that, that is learning to create simple, meaningful phrases or sentences rooted in the raga structure. Now let us take example of Rag Yaman. In Aroha, we can go, I will just play the Tanpura. So in Aroha, we can go like Ni Re Ga Ma, but not like Ni Sa Re Ga Ma, because Sa does not appear in Aroha of Yaman. It is phrase of Kalyan. But in Avroha, descending, Sa comes in Rag Yaman. So we can land on it or we can use it while ending the phrase. Now let us try creating few phrases using just few notes in Rag Yaman and ending them on the Sa like a full stop to make the sentence complete as well. Now, okay. Ni re ga ma re ga re ni re ni sa. Now the same sentence, if I sing in Akar, it will become Alap, and with words, it will become Bolala. See, for example, Bolata Nahi. These are the words in say in some bandish, random bandish. Now, okay, or a Bolata Nahi More Sana. These are the this is the sentence, like a lyrical sentence. Now, when we combine it with this musical sentence which we just demonstrated, how will it sound? Like ni re ga ma re ga re ni re ni sa ni re ga ma bolata re ga re nahi ni re more ni sa sa bolata nahi more sana. It immediately becomes a composition, right? Here is another example with slightly different flow. Ni re ga re ni ga re ga ma ga re ni sa ni da ni sa. See how we are using different combinations, small group of notes, and connecting them in such a way that they represent the Raag Chalan and they are forming different sentences as well. This process of combining note, phrases or constructing the phrases to create the meaningful flow, we call it as a Raag Vistar, the expansion and elaboration of a Raag. So while doing the Riyaz, you can explore different type of paths within the Raag, try out different combinations and see what feels and sounds right. The one which feels natural, musical, those phrases or those sentences we can practice more, we can polish them, and then eventually we can start using them in the performance. The third Riyaz in the aesthetical part of the music is voice modulation. So voice modulation is a powerful tool that makes Hindustani classical and semi-classical singers, or all these singers they generally use to bring life and emotion to their music. It is also quite popular in non-classical forms like Bollywood songs or Bhav Geet and so on. You might have heard great artists like Pandit Venkatesh Kumar, Begum Parveen Sultana, and Pandit Ajay Chakravarti who use voice modulation techniques to bring very different type of feel in their concert. It gives a very beautiful aesthetical enhancement to their music. So there are two main types in which you can actually modulate your voice. while singing. So you can make it louder or you can make it softer. Now let's take a phrase in Raag Yaman for Riyaz. Okay. Now how to do Riyaz of the voice modulation technique. Say in Yaman. Ni re ga ma re ga re ni sa. Now let us decide for the notes G and M. We will sing them louder, and re re, that phrase we will sing softer. So ni re ga ma louder and re softer. So ni re. Now first I will show without any modulation. Okay. Ni re re ni sa. Kind of I am giving equal weightage, equal voice weight to all these phrases. Now I will make ni re re ni sa. Right? Can you understand the difference? Suddenly it changes the mood, it changes the feel, it changes everything. You can decide whether you want to make your voice louder or softer for any particular phrase depending on the mood which you want to deliver in your performance. So, if we practice this consciously, it adds a beautiful layer of expression to our singing. I am also sharing a link in the description to fantastic video by Pandit Ajay Chakravarti ji, where he teaches 6 different ways in which you can use these voice modulations more effectively. Check it out to deepen your understanding of the voice modulation and bring different elements to your practice. Now we have seen already the 4 different types. Now the 5th one is about the bandish or the composition. We have already looked at how to practice a bandish using tal beats, especially to build a sense of lay and tal. That riyaz is really foundational. But beyond that, there are many other ways to approach a bandish or a composition, and we have to practice it. I will show you in different ways. Now, I would like to share some of these techniques with you. Now, I will be focusing mainly on Hindustani style bandishes because I am more familiar with it. But as I said earlier as well, the basic concepts they can be applied to other forms of music as well, like Drupad and Carnatic styles. So Carnatic Kritis, Carnatic Pallavis or Drupad bandishes as well. So similar techniques they can be used. I mean, older traditions of Hindustani Gharana system, bandishes were often seen more than just compositions, but they were considered as maps to explore and expand the swaras within any raga, or the maps which they were the bandishes. They were like a navigating tools for any rag, because that time it was a verbal tradition. So these compositions they used to be treated like maps to explore and expand the raga. So while doing the improvisation or developing the raga, the notation or the structure of the bandish can serve as a valuable guide, almost like a navigator. Now to practice this or doing the riyaz of the composition, I think there can be 2 different ways. First, bandish, breaking it down, the notation of the bandish into different phrases and create different variations. And second one is to explore the lyrical meaning of the bandish and fit your improvisations, that is the musical improvisation, accordingly. Now this kind of practice makes your performance not just technically sound and correct but also emotionally rich. So let us see 2 different types one by one. So the first one is breaking down the notation of the bandish into different phrases. In earlier times, there wasn't lot of written literature available on music or on different ragas specifically. So for many new learners and performers, the bandish Bandish served as a primary gateway to understand the rag. Let's take a traditional bandish in Raag Yaman as an example. Sakieri I Piabina, the same bandish. Sakieri Ali Piabina कलन परत मोहे घड़ी पलचिन दिन एरी आली पिया बिन. Now the notation part of this one is Saki eri ai piya bin. Saki eri ai piya bin. Madani da pare sagare maga kalana padat mohe papa papa madha papa घड़ी पलचिन दिन नीद papa re sa sa. Okay, so this is like a map. Now, how should we use this map to explore the path, especially in our Riyaz? Now, simple and effective method is to go through the bandish in three different ways. First is we can sing the bandish using the notation, like how we did. First the bandish, then with the notation, then sing it using the akar, like and then finally with the lyrics. So when we do this several times, repeat this cycle like sargam, akar and lyrics, sargam, akar and lyrics. What happens? It really helps us to solidify the structure and movement of the bandish, and our voice will automatically follow. We will get that understanding automatically how we can expand the phrases, and we will start realizing those phrases as well. Now, let us talk about expanding the bandish, how creatively we can work upon it. A good approach is to break down the bandish into smaller phrases. I mean the notation of the bandish into smaller phrases and explore different permutations and combination within those. For an example, in the Raag Yaman bandish, take the phrase Ni da pa ma re sa. Okay, with Taal. Yeri IP abin. Okay. Sakieri ai nira pare sa. So here we have five swaras in the descending order, Avaroha. Let us also take the next phrase, Gare Maga, which moves in both like descending order, Gare Maga, like Gama, so descending and ascending. So both Aroha and Avaroha direction. Now, we can combine these two together and we can reverse those phrases to get one different sentence. So for example, how it was Nida pare sa gare maga. We'll reverse it. Gare maga nida pare sa. Yeah, we get a different sentence. So this gives us beautiful opportunity to explore through bandish. Like how can we use it like a map and explore it further. Now you can create new patterns and melodic ideas playing with all these notes of the bandish. But remember in the same framework so that the Raag Yaman is maintained. Okay. Now here are a few examples of the phrases for how we can come up with. Gare ma dha pare sa. A different phrase, right? Different ala with the same structure. We have just skipped some notes in that previous sentence. Or Madani da pa ga ma re sa. Madani da pa ga ma re sa ga re ma ga. Likewise, Not just alap, but we can also develop tan like this using the same framework of the bandish. For an example, re ma ga ma ni da pa, re ma ga pa, re ma ga ma ni da pa, re ma ga pa, re ma da pa, re ga ma re ga re sa. Now this we can use as tan, or even like kari as well, or maybe some other like simple tan we can take for an example. Re ma ga pa ni da pa ma re ga re sa, re ma ga pa ni da pa ma re ga re sa, re ma ga pa ni da pa ma re ga re sa. So same that initial phrase, ga re ma ga ni da pa ma re sa. In that phrase only we are just playing around, and we are developing alaps or tan or other different sentences. Now once we have explored this phrase thoroughly, we have explored different possibilities, we can move to the next phrase of the bandish. Like here we explored the area, then we can explore the other area piabina kalana padata mohe, like pa 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 pa. So that one we can explore, and further we can get n number of different possibilities just with the bandish. So we in the Riyaz we can try combining different phrases together. We can also combine two different phrases, first of the first sentence, then of the next sentence. So the possibilities, they just open up. So this kind of practice not only deepens your understanding of the rag, but also keeps your Riyaz engaging and fresh. You won't get bored easily, right? Now we are not just repeating the same phrase like ni re ga ma pa ma ga re sa, ni re ga ma, not like that. You are trying to bring more and more variety in your practice. You are discovering, and only then you will enjoy. Otherwise, it becomes boring, right? So when we are just asked to repeat a phrase again and again, it is quite boring. So this technique, try using this kind of technique to explore more in the framework of a bandish and in a rag. So the second technique is unfolding the lyrical meaning of the bandish. That is another very important aspect of any particular composition. Lyrics, or what is also known as sahitya. The meaning conveyed by the words is just as significant as the musical content. Ideally, the vistar of any rag or the musical improvisation should work hand in hand with the sahitya. The melody and the lyrical meaning, they should support each other. But as you might have noticed, in many performances, that balance is missing. To make the language of the music and language of the lyrics blend truly, we need to adapt a specific kind of practice. It is quite challenging, but with practice, we can deliver it. This is actually, because it's challenging, it is one reason why many performers default doing most of their rag vistar in akar, just using or some other words, or they use just one word again and again throughout the performance. But while akar practice is very important, when it is used exclusively in performance, sometimes the performance becomes monotonous. To like the audience, they may get bored after time, after say couple of minutes, or say when there is a longer performance, say 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So it becomes slightly boring. You might have heard people even saying that, oh, it's all about music, I don't understand what is going on, and like that, right? That's where we lose the emotional connect with the sahitya part of the bandish or the lyrics. So now what is the solution? How to do riyaz for this? First step to do the riyaz is to understand the lyrical meaning of the bandish. Understand meaning of each and every word in the composition. Often bandishes are written in the languages which we are not fully familiar with, like Brij Bhasha, Awadhi, or like Urdu sometimes. That can lead to misinterpretation, mispronunciation, and so many other mistakes what we do. and we are not able to convey the proper meaning as well through our music. Next, we also need to identify where the vowels lie in the lyrics. Remember, we did that vowel practice? That is also important. So, stretching and expanding those vowels or those vowel sounds rather than consonants is what makes the phrase sound musical. If we emphasize on the wrong part, the consonant part, it may sound awkward, right? It may distort the meaning, lyrical meaning of the composition as well. So in the practice, you can explore many powerful permutations and combinations of the musical phrases, but for the performance, it is important to choose those phrases which actually fit for both like rag chalan, rag rules, as well as sahitya, the words, lyrical meaning of the composition. So only then the performance will feel natural, expressive, and emotionally rich as well. So these are just few practical strategies working with Bandish. It's not limited. There is no single correct way as well, or the rule book to practice this. Just couple of techniques. Key is to say stay curious and just keep exploring in multiple ways. Every Bandish is an opportunity to discover new expressions both musically as well as poetically when we are doing the riyaz or the practice, and we have to choose the one which sounds more appealing in our performance. Now, to do all these things, we have to keep ourselves focused and we have to build a concentration, right? So, riyaz of that is also important. And how do we do that? So, pranayam and meditation are the two techniques. So, they are not just for the wellness, but we have to actually practice them so that we can get the focus and concentration. So, these are like a tools. They can be used as tools by the music practitioner. You might wonder, how do they help in the music? Well, regular practice of pranayam and meditation can significantly improve the concentration and focus. They will calm the mind, they will reduce the performance anxiety, and they will actually reduce the physical stress on our like vocal cords and even on the body, which sometimes shows up during the singing. You might have noticed, like when singers are singing the high notes or doing the improvisation, um, the artists they close eyes tightly, or they give some weird expression as if there is a lot of pain in their throat, there are wrinkles on their forehead, and like so many other different type of expression. So that kind of stress, so pranayam and meditation, it will help to reduce that stress as well. It will provide regular breathing or the nice airflow. So even the airflow when we are singing, it will become more smooth. So as a result, we'll get relaxed voice, smoother tone, and grounded presence on the stage. Another big benefit is like staying calm and composed, doing all the multitasking. Like there is tabla, there is tanpura, so many things are going on. So this is what will keep the performance calm and composed. So this practice is actually very essential for all the music learners and performers. When we are singing or when we are giving the performance, there are so many tasks which we do parallelly. Think about it. While we are improvising, we are also listening to tabla, we are listening to tanpura, we are listening to our own voice, so much at one time. Now this requires a centered and attentive mind as well. So the meditation and the breath work, it can actually train us for that. Even 10 minutes of pranayam and 5 minutes of meditation daily can make noticeable difference in your singing. I've already created a separate video on pranayam techniques, so you can find the link in the description as well. As for meditation, there are many approaches available. It's best to explore and find one which suits you personally. Well, I follow a practice known as Chakradharana meditation. It is taught by Sri M. So I learned it from the YouTube videos and it works for me very well. So I use it. But then my suggestion is that you choose it yourself, which suits you more. Also, while doing the practice, do this practice of pranayam and meditation before you actually start your practice of vocal exercises or the listening riyaz as well. That way, you begin your music practice with quite focused mind so that your practice will be more productive and effective and you will be able to absorb the essence. And finally, most important part, all these six type of riyas are great, but unless you can apply them in the performance, they won't help. Think of your performance like telling a story based on whether you have 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. Plan your time slots and weave all these techniques together in the performance. This is what makes your singing engaging for the audience. But how to practice that? Well, we'll have to break down the total performance time in different slots and then decide how would how we would like to bring the story and how we want to deliver the story. For example, 30 minutes of Kyal performance, we can break down 5 minutes of Alaps, 10 minutes for the Vilambit Alap and the improvisation, then 5 minutes for the Laikari part, 2 to 3 minutes for the Tan part, rest 6 to 7 minutes for the Druta Bandesh. Likewise, then for each part, we have to think how can we integrate the different practice techniques, different alankars or other techniques to make that story more interesting. Now, the practice of the technique is important. However, we also need to practice applying these techniques into the actual performance. Now, due to limited time, and we have already talked about so many things in this video, I won't go into more details as of now, but I will definitely come up with a separate video about how to design your performance very soon. So let us take a quick recap. We have looked into a lot of things and it could have been quite overwhelming already. So before we move to the next part, let us take a quick overview again of all these techniques which we discussed. We started with the riyas of listening to different compositions in the same rag, recognizing the notes, listening to tal and tanpura and giving the attention to that particular pieces. Then we discussed about the vocal riyas, where we learned about sur perfection, pitch perfection, swaralankar or palte practice, pronunciation, and pranayama. Then for the tal and lay riyas, we saw tanpura practice, sargam with beats, bandish with beats, and tal bol with beats. We also learned about different ornaments like meend, gamak, voice modulations for the aesthetic performance. And then we went through the riyas of the composition, the bandish, concentration focus, and finally we ended up on how to apply these different techniques and create a performance or how to use them in the presentation. Now, let us have a look at other questions which we discussed in the beginning about the riyas. One of the most common question is how much time should I practice? Now here is my honest take on this. Rather than focusing only on how much time you practice, I believe how you practice and whether you feel confident after that practice is far more important. You see, earlier it was a common hearing advice like practice for 10 hours a day, wake up at 4 a.m. to go ahead. But in today's world, with our fast paced life and multiple responsibilities, limited time in our hand, that may not be possible or even it may not be necessary. How much time you need to achieve something is very personal. It varies from person to person. Some people may learn quickly, others may take a little longer, and that's perfectly okay. Personally, I used to do a practice for at least 1 hour to 1.5 hours per day and little more on weekends for the vocal riyas. Listening, listening riyas, thinking about the music, what I have learned or how I am going to apply it to my performance, I used to do whenever I could get little free time. What I learned is that all the different techniques which we have talked about, they need to be spread across a weekly or monthly schedule based on the time in our hand realistically, and we have to distribute it each day giving equal weightage to different techniques. Instead of focusing only on one kind of practice, we need to balance between different techniques. Yes, progress might seem slow at the beginning, but trust me, it becomes sustainable and holistic. And once you reach a certain level or get to a certain level, it becomes much more easier to know what kind of practice you need in which situation. For example, earlier when my voice used to go out of tune or I didn't know how to fix a bad voice in that particular day, I would really struggle a lot. But now with the right techniques, I just need 30 minutes focused practice to fix my voice if it goes out of tune. So don't worry too much about number of hours. Instead, focus on the intentional, consistent and balanced practice. That is what truly leads to the progress. Practice with purpose. Grow with patience. That is the secret of the success. Do you sometimes feel that your riyas is becoming repetitive, maybe even boring? I have been there too. When I was as a child, I was learning the music in my school days. I was often asked to practice alankars like sa re ga ma pa and so on and so forth. Usually just 5 to 10 different alankar patterns of say and that too in the Shuddha Swaras and repeat them 100 times. It was quite boring. Later it would be like a bandish or tan and repeat it again and again 108 times and so on. Very boring. Repeat it again and again. But later I learned different techniques to bring variety in the riyas from different videos, YouTube videos and other workshops like from Pandit Ajay Chakrabarti ji, Pandit Vijay Bakshi ji and some other people through their YouTube channel, online classes or the videos. Now based on my learning, I think there are three different ways in which you can bring variety in your riyas. So let's see one by one. So the first technique is use of Merukhand to explore more possibilities. It is one of the powerful way to make your riyas more engaging. Merukhand or Swara is ancient technique of permutations and combinations. It is even mentioned in Sangeet Ratnakar. So how to do that? Suppose if you take three notes, say sa re ga, you get six different type of combinations like sa re ga, re sa ga re, re ga sa and ga re sa without repeating. But if we repeat any of these notes, then we get number of different permutations and combinations. Now with these, uh, each of these six say uh, pieces, say sa re ga re sa ga, we can actually build a full Swaralankar or a Balta like sa re ga ma pa or re sa ga re ma. Likewise, we can build with each of that piece. In reverse as well, we can sing the same way. Now these were just with the three notes. The four notes will give you 24 different combinations, and you can use these patterns to create new phrases, dance, palta, swara alankars, so many different ways. This not just builds your creativity, it keeps your mind active and engaged during the riyas. Check more details from Pandit Vijay Bakshiji's Merukhand tutorial videos. I am giving the link in the description. Another technique to bring the variety in the Riyaz is playing with the scales and swara variations. So we can actually shift in between these different scales, or even what we know as thats. Now say we take one phrase Saregama, and now we'll sing it by changing the different swara modification. So let me show you that. Okay, initially we'll sing all that in the Shuddha swaras. Sare gama, sare gama re sa gama. Even with Merukhand we can do. So all Shuddha swaras, sare gama. Then we will make the re komal to bring some variety. So sare gama, sare gama. Different flavor. Now we'll make ga komal. Rest all Shuddha. So sare gama, sare gama. Yeah, different. New color. We'll make re ga komal and ma tivra like todi. So sa re ga ma ga re sa. Completely transformed, right? So likewise we can bring different variety in our riyas with just one phrase. Actually, we are exploring multiple emotions and textures. It is far more engaging than singing the same alankar again and again. Sare gama, it's quite boring, right? So now how can we vary the scale? Let us take one example, say sare gapa dasa, which are the 5 notes. If we sing them all in Shuddha swaras, or we take them Shuddha, then it becomes Raag Bhoop scale. And if we change that, we will get different ragas. See how. So sa re ga pa dha sa dha pa ga re sa. That is for the bhoop. If we make the re komal, sa re ga pa dha sa dha pa ga re sa. It is vibhas type 1. If we make re and dha both komal, it will become vibhas type 2. Sa re ga pa dha sa dha pa ga re sa. If we keep all the swars shuddha but just make the ga komal, it becomes scale of Raag Shivaranjani. See, sa re ga pa dha sa re ga re sa dha pa ga re sa. Shivaranjan. If you make dha komal, rest all shuddha, it becomes a scale of Raag Bhupeshwari or Raag Pratiksha. So sa re ga pa dha sa dha pa ga re sa. Different flavor, right? More variety. If we make re ga dha komal, it will become scale for Raag Bhopal Tode. Sa re ga pa dha sa dha pa ga re sa. So likewise, you can explore different combinations in different scales. So just by tweaking one or two notes, you can unlock entirely different ragas. This opens up your musical imagination as well. You can also practice Saregama Padhanisa Sanidhapa Magarisa in 10 different third scales as well. That will add another variety to your Riyaz. So this way you will be able to do Riyaz of all the 12 notes and you can master them without getting bored. So the third technique to bring more variety in your Riyaz is explore multiple compositions in one Rag. What will they do? They will open more possibilities. Every composition reveals a new shade of a rag. You might notice that one singer sings it in a specific way, another person brings his own imagination into it. So that way we understand different possibilities to explore the rag. Suppose we are practicing rag bhoop, then listen to different songs in that rag. Listen to recordings of different artists in the same rag. Notice how they are interpreting it in different ways. It deepens your understanding. It keeps your riyas exciting. Listen to instrumental performances in the same rag like sitar, violin, or we can also look for equivalents across the systems. For example, if we are practicing rag bhoop in Hindustani, try listening to rag mohanam in Carnatic system. You can also compare between similar ragas. Like for example, while practicing rag bhoop, there is rag deskar, there is rag shuddha kalyan, mohanam, which are very similar to each other. Which phrases are similar in these rag? What makes these rag distinct from each other? Try to understand that. So next time your riyas starts to feel repetitive, don't quit. Just shift your approach and see how interesting it becomes. Now, we have looked upon so many things that you might struggle to understand what to do, where to start my practice, and eventually you might mess it up everything and will not reach anywhere in your practice. So, how to avoid this? Well, sometimes we are not just short on motivation, we are short on structure and planning. We sit down for a riyas and then wonder, hmm, what exactly should I practice today? Happens, right? So, let us see how we can plan our riyas to get maximum benefit in the shorter time. I have thought of two different ways of planning. You can choose any of these which suits you, or you can also find your own way other than these two. Also, choose based upon your level. If you are just a beginner, please select only one technique from each category. Once you master it, then move to the other types. Advanced level, you may choose different approach. So you can based on what you want, where you want to get to, your aspiration to become a singer, you have to focus more on a vocal riyas. If you want to become music composer, you can focus more on variety bringing riyas, and so on. You can choose wisely. Now the two techniques which I talked about. So one simple method of planning is rotation by riyas type. So practice one type of riyas each day from seven different types of riyas which we saw. Like for example, Monday voice riyas, Tuesday Taal-laya riyas, Wednesday composition riyas, Thursday aesthetic and ornamentation riyas, Friday listening and reflection, Saturday improvisation and application, Sunday maybe attending a concert or just discuss your riyas with other practitioner, your friends, and so on. So this way you know exactly what to focus on each day. It brings clarity, variety, and it gives you a proper structure for your riyas. Another method is time based mix. If you have 1 hour in a day, suppose for the practice, okay, then do spend 10 minutes on each type of riyas. But no matter whichever method you choose, two things I highly recommend doing every single day, no matter what. First, vocal riyas. Do it at least for 10 to 15 minutes and pranayama. These are like brushing your teeth. They keep your foundation clean and strong. Within each type of riyas, I have shared several subtypes, right? So each week you can choose any one subtype and then go deeper into it. Say for example, week 1 you can do long notes, you can do tanpura tuning, sargam with tal, bandish with notation, any one alankar, see mean. Then for week 2, you can choose like say Uchcharan, the pronunciation, Riyaz, Akar, Ikar, Ukar, that Riyaz, listening to any say two compositions, then Merukhand or Palte Riyaz, Tal Bol Riyaz, Gamak as one of the Alankar. So these 5 on 5 days. Likewise, you'll have to split the Riyaz or the practice over your weekly schedule, daily schedule, and maybe even the monthly schedule. This way you will keep your practice more focused and get the maximum benefits out of it. And in this way, if you are doing the same type of riyaz, it still will not feel you boring and repetitive. You will stay engaged. Before you begin the riyaz, one small ritual I encourage you to try it out. Okay, chant Om slowly with full devotion at least for say 5 times, or recite any prayer or mantra which connects with you, or simply just sit in silence and do 5 minutes of pranayam before your practice. This helps to settle your mind because we bring lot of stress, frustration, noise, so many things from outside world into our riyas. This will affect our voice, our focus, our energy, everything. So keep calm. Do this practice, pranayam or chanting at the beginning of the riyas. Because otherwise later you will wonder, I am doing so much of practice but I don't see the result. So keeping calm is very important. So just create a schedule which suits you and follow it dedicatedly for effective practice. Ah, quite an extensive video and so many things might be overwhelming as well. But you can go through it again section by section and then grasp it. Let me quickly give you an overview of what all we looked at. We started with 4 major questions about Riyaz. First, we focused about what kind of Riyaz we should do, and then we saw 7 different techniques and their subtypes: listening Riyaz, vocal Riyaz, Taal-laya Riyaz, aesthetic Riyaz, Bandish Riyaz, focus and concentration Riyaz, and application of all these elements into the performance. Then we saw how much time to practice. Followed by that, we went through 3 different techniques: Merukhand, different scale use, and listening to different compositions in the same rag to bring more variety in our riyaz and make it less boring. And lastly, we saw 2 different methods to plan our riyaz over the week, over the month, and over the day as well to make it more effective and focused by using 2 different methods: time-based rotation and time-based mix. So friends, now you know that Riyaz is not just about how long you practice, but how you practice. Balance the listening, voice training, rhythm, aesthetics, composition, and focus. Over the time, your progress will be steady, sustainable, and deeply satisfying. If you like this guide, do share it with your fellow musicians or fellow or other friends. Also, if you know more Riyaz techniques, then please do share with me in the comments as well. I would like to learn those techniques. So, see you soon in the next video. Until then, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep singing. Bye bye.